So, believe it or not, we are already 6 months into 2019, which means we have 6 months left of the year. Now is a great time to be assessing your fundraising work and kind of doing a reset for the rest of the year. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to create your fundraising plan for the second half of 2019. I'm going to give you 4 easy steps to follow to build out your roadmap to fundraising success. Hey there, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Vanessa Lockshin. I'm the president of the Storytelling Nonprofit. I'm super excited for today's topic to dive into talking about how to build our plan for fundraising for the second half of the year. I know many of you build a fundraising plan for your annual year or your fiscal calendar, whatever you may be working on. And one of the things that I really like to do is to kind of take a mid-year pause and really assess what's happened and figure out ways in which I maybe need to course correct or change my strategy for the second half of the year based on what's happened during the first half of that year. So that's what we're going to be talking about here today. Let's go ahead and dive in. The first step in this process is to assess what's happened. There are so many benefits to doing a review. And in fact, recently here on my YouTube channel, I shared a tutorial on how to do a mid-year review of your fundraising program. So if you haven't watched that, I'll link to that here on the screen if you want to check it out. But bottom line, the reason why I suggest people do an assessment or review before they start planning what's next is to really glean some insights about how the year has gone, what's worked and what hasn't, and how we can start to really build on the success and momentum we've had in the first 6 months of the year. So start here and then we'll build from this place. Our next step in this process is to declare a goal. So one of the things that needs to happen if we're going to build a roadmap for the next 6 months of our fundraising is we need to know where we're going. And the best way to do that is to set a goal for ourselves. Now, there's a few ways you can set a goal for this 6-month period in 2019, and I'll talk about 2 options for that. So the first goal, probably pretty straightforward for fundraising, could be the amount of money you need to raise. So you might want to look if you're midway through your fiscal year, calendar year, how much money you've raised to date, how much more you have to go. That might be a very natural goal for you to set. If you're just restarting your fiscal year, you might look at what you want to raise during the first half of this fiscal year if you started July 1st. I want to pull up some data from past years and projections, things like that, just to look at what you've been able to raise during the second half of the year to really give yourself some realistic goals, but also to maybe set a bit of a stretch goal if you're planning on trying out some new things this year. The second way to set a goal for yourself and to help yourself build this roadmap to the goal is to set up more of a qualitative goal, like donor retention or the number of donor visits you want to go out on if you're in major gifts. Personally, I like having a mix of both qualitative and quantitative goals in a fundraising plan. I think that it's always great to measure the amount of money we're raising. That's a very straightforward way to measure our fundraising success. But I think there's also some other helpful things that we can look at to really give us a complete picture of our fundraising program. And so picking some meaningful metrics or some really important milestones for you might be a great way to capture that information in your planning. So moving right along into our next step, we're going to set your priority projects in this next phase of our plan. So I know from my own experience in fundraising that it's always tempting to think that we can do all the things, right? We've got a lot on our plate. We think we can really stretch ourselves, do lots of projects, do lots of work, do all the things that need to happen in order for our program to be a really massive success. But I want to give you a reality check here. Is it really possible for you to do every single last little thing on that laundry list of to-dos for the next 6 months? Probably not. So I would love for you in this part of our planning process to really identify your project priorities. And I often say, if you've been on a webinar with me before, that I tell people that focus looks good on them. And I say this because it's really essential to bring some focus into our work. And by focusing on a couple of key projects or key initiatives, we're really able to get clarity on what it is that's most important and needs to get done, and also really helps us to not feel like we're spreading ourselves super thin in the projects and initiatives that we're working on. So here's what I want to recommend you do. Decide on 3 to 5 projects that will really help you make progress towards your goals. Now, these are not the tactical things that you're going to do. We're going to get to that here in a few minutes. But let's say your goal is to raise something like $50,000 in the next 6 months and the second half of 2019. Well, one of your projects might be your year-end fundraising campaign. That's a big project. If you've been through year-end fundraising, you know that that's true. So of course, that might require multiple tactics and for us to kind of break down what's involved in a big project like running a year-end campaign. But that's just to give you an example of what one of those priority projects could look like for you in your fundraising plan. All right, so the last step of this planning process, we're really getting into the brass tacks, which is to assign key project tasks to each month of your 6-month time frame. So this step in planning is all about breaking down our big projects and really giving ourselves an even higher degree of clarity about what we are working on when and what we're going to do. So what I like to do is kind of create a chart for myself where I put the months across in the top first row. So that would be July, August, September, October, November, December, if we're working on the 6-month time frame. And then underneath each of those months, I like to list out the key project tasks I plan to work on for that month. So for instance, going back to the year-end fundraising campaign project idea, in October, November, December, there are undoubtedly tasks that need to happen for that. And so I might think about which of those things I can do ahead of time in October, what I might need to work on in November and December, and so on. I find that being able to kind of go into this granular planning and just give myself high-level tasks to work on for each of those months really makes it easier at the beginning of that month to then sit down and say, okay, here's exactly what needs to happen for me to work towards these goals that I've set and really make meaningful progress towards them. So there you have it, 4 steps to build out your fundraising plan for the second half of 2019. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. How are you planning for the second half of the year? Leave a comment and let me know. As always, thank you so much for watching this tutorial. If you've enjoyed it, be sure to give it a thumbs up here on YouTube. And if you'd like even more fundraising and communications tutorials, be sure to subscribe to my channel for new videos each week.